Good afternoon. My name is Amy Henley, and I am the Dean of the Nistler College of Business and Public Administration. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us at our inaugural Be Bold UND Women in Leadership event. This virtual conference was developed through the passion and ideas brought forward from UND alumnus Mary Fisher as the legacy of our Hultberg Lectureship series, which was established 34 years ago with a gift provided by 1928 UND graduate Clara Anderson, who had an interest in addressing the challenges and creating opportunities for women in business and public service. This year, due to the unprecedented times we are all experiencing, we are pleased to still bring this event to you in a virtual format and continue these very important conversations on women in leadership. While we wish we could be together in person, we are amazed to see so many students and alumni joining us from all around the country. Thank you for being here. Our topic today is going to focus on Be Bold. This concept is critical for young professionals entering the workforce, as well as established employees who are wishing to be heard. In a recent study of performance, 66% of women received negative reviews based on their personal style, while only 1% of men received the same feedback. So as women, how can we be bold and find our voice at the table? Today, we will explore this topic among many other opportunities for growth in the workplace. As a female leader, I recognize how tough it can be sometimes to lead effectively while balancing the expectations of others. How should you behave? Are you too bold? Are you too meek? Are you too aggressive or not decisive enough? There's a lot of uncertainty about how to behave and how to be successful as a female leader. So as we get started with today's discussion, we will kick off with our Hultberg Panel Discussion, followed by a keynote presentation by Carin Anderson from the Minnesota Wild Hockey. We are extremely fortunate to have the opportunity to host 4 amazing UND alumni to share their personal experiences as women in leadership. In our studio today, we would like to welcome Mary Fisher, Director of Sponsorships for United Health Group, Kim Woods, AVP and Senior Director of Development for the Nistler College and the UND Foundation, Lindsay Henderson, Human Resource Manager for Icon Architects, and Sarah Nupdal, Banking Legal Manager for Bell Bank. These 4 women have generations of insights and some fantastic tips for all of us on how to be bold and establish our own personal brand. We are honored to have Mary Fisher serving as our moderator for this discussion. So please join me in welcoming our Hultberg panelists.
Thank you, Amy, and welcome to everyone at the table today. Thanks for coming. I hope you all noticed we feel like we've got our own talk show going, so we might start a weekly program because we're having so much fun already. But I did want to talk about how we really took great care in coming up with a panel that has a variety of experiences in industries. For instance, Lindsay works for a small company in the field of architecture, and she's in the HR field. I work for a very large multinational company and in the insurance field, and I'm in marketing and sponsorships. We have Sarah over here who works for a mid-sized company in the financial industry, and she gives us a perspective from the legal field. And then my lovely Kim from the Harvard of the North, University of North Dakota.
Absolutely.
So we've got representation from our college, and she gives us a great perspective on the nonprofit field as well as selling, really. So welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And for being bold and taking a chance of coming out here and doing this. So Amy talked about in her introduction about how important it is for we women today, and especially we've seen so many things happening with the NCAA situation where we're facing some gender inequities and things like that. How do we women find our voice, and how do we make sure it's heard? I read in a study recently that men do 75% of the talking in meetings, and why is that? Is that a nurture versus nature thing? Are we doing that on our own? Lindsay, what do you think? What's your perspective on why do you think women don't speak up more in meetings?
And this was definitely a struggle for me, especially starting out in my career. You know, I was 24 years old, fresh out of college. It was my first real job, And just being in HR, you're inherently part of the leadership team, right? You're the people leader. So I was sitting in these meetings with these men and women who have been in their careers for years, and I would just be so intimidated to speak up or share my opinion, because what value can I add to, what do I have to say that they haven't heard before?
Right,
what ideas
right.
do I have that they haven't thought of? So I would just be silent, and I would sit in meetings and not say a word, and I would take notes and I would listen, and of course listening is important, but I would think these ideas in my head, and then the guy next to me would say the idea that I was thinking in my head, and I would just kick myself after these meetings, like, why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you say that? Because the person next to me says it, and his idea was validated. And so to get over that, I kind of got to know my audience. I got to know the my group of leaders, and practicing beforehand was key for me. You have your
Practicing is
meeting
important.
agenda, right? You have your agenda, you know what you're going to be talking about in the meeting. And for me, just to build that confidence, especially when I was young in my career, was just to practice, know my message, get a clear and concise message, and deliver it with confidence. And that's how I've been able to kind of have my voice heard in intimidating situations.
Yeah, and I think, Lindsay, just going off of what you said, I think it's important to know, like, you don't have to know it in the moment either. Like, it's okay to be in a meeting and then follow up afterwards, send a question, hey, I thought of this after the fact, or sometimes you don't have to be so on the spot. So I like that.
I agree.
And I would say gaining experience and being more comfortable and confident in those situations, and stretch yourself out of that norm or stretch yourself and challenge yourself to know that what you have to say is valid, helpful, and then, the best leaders I've worked with are those that want to hear from all of us. And they will either make the conversation or the situation so comfortable that you want to share your ideas.
Sure, yeah.
Right.
I mean, those are
Absolutely.
such valued leaders that really know that your opinion does count, and they want to hear you talk about it and speak your experience.
And we as women leaders, we need to make sure that we're engaging those
Absolutely.
younger associates that are new in the workforce, to encourage them, spend time with them, mentoring them. Another thing I was taught when I was young, if you get interrupted by somebody, interrupt them right back and just say, hey, could you hold on just a second? I wasn't finished with my thought. And that's a friendly but assertive way to handle that without coming across too hard. As we women, we hear that term double bind a lot, where if you're too overly aggressive or assertive or seen as such, you get potentially nasty names called about you. So it's really hard for us to strike that balance, don't you think? I don't know if you've ever experienced that same sort of thing.
Well, or one thing I will do if someone else in a meeting is getting talked over, I might say, back to
Yes.
Kim's point. Can you
Advocate,
expand on that? Or
advocate,
I might ask a
advocate.
question about Kim's point if she gets kind of talked over or if it gets missed.
And if meetings get too chatty and you're on a tight time frame, I don't hesitate to bring it back to why we're here.
Right.
Sure.
Because we're all busy. So, it's really important to keep it tight, concise, and be able to accomplish what it was that you wanted in that meeting. Because some meetings get a little too chatty for me, and I'm there saying,
Keep it back. We gotta move on.
We've
Yep,
got to move
totally.
on. I've got things to do.
Yep.
Got calls to make.
Another thing, and this has been shown in studies as well, that women feel afraid to speak unless they have it all figured out and that they have all the answers and that they have everything perfect. And that's something that I think that we all need to let go, because nobody's ever perfect, and you just need to take a risk, be bold, and get your answers out there. Or if it makes you feel more comfortable while you start doing that, to practice before you go into the meeting if you've got an idea you'd like to present to a group. And practice it in front of a mirror, practice it in front of your spouse, whatever that may be. Maybe in front of your kids, who knows?
I'm very interested in other people's perspective, and am a lifelong learner. So I really do care what other people think, how they would react to a situation, and everybody's voice matters.
Sure.
Right. That's great. So that really leads into another question I wanted to pose to all of you about developing your own personal brand, because speaking up at those meetings is part of building your own personal brand. And I get a lot of questions about what is your personal brand and how do you build that up? What do you think, Sarah?
Yeah, I think for me, personal brand ties back to like your core value system or like the legacy that you're trying to leave behind. So I think going back to when you're interacting in the workplace or even outside of that, it's really focused on, okay, what are those core values and how does that become your brand? And then I also think it's okay for that to evolve or change over time. You know, like Kim said, being a lifelong learner, it's sort of with your brand too. You know, you see things you want to emulate or people, and that changes it a bit.
Yeah, and I think that, let's say you've had some missteps or something and that's fed into what your personal brand is, there's always time to correct it. It isn't one and done.
Absolutely.
You can evolve, you can change, and I think the greatest learnings come out of failures. So we've all had failures with our personal brand, but I think if you can take those learnings and be open to suggestions and feedback, that you'll grow to be an even stronger leader.
If it's fail forward,
Fail forward, that's a great term that everybody should embrace. So many people are so afraid of failing, and like I said, your greatest growth comes out of that.
Sure. I kind of look at personal brand as what is the story that people are saying about me when I'm not in the room, right? And what do I want that story to be? What do I want that narrative to be? And for me, in developing my personal brand in my career, I look at others that I respect and that I admire and that I want to emulate, and what maybe leadership skills or what personality traits do they have that I want to be, or that I want to have. And so I kind of hone in on that, and to Sarah's point, you just look at leaders in your life that you respect, and what are they doing, and what's the story that you think about them when they're not in the room.
You know, Kim, you were telling me a story earlier about how you emulate almost create mentors with it without them even knowing they're mentors.
Right. I'm always picking up the best habits and best practices from people that I admire, respect, and appreciate. Because I think, again, we can learn from so many people. And I think for me, I've been in business now for over 40 years, which seems unreal. But, staying consistent. I've always wanted to be extremely professional. I have certainly wanted to be very accurate. I wanted to be extremely committed to what I do and love. And that consistency, I think that, you're going to get a fast response from me. If I don't have the answer, I will find the answer for you. So I think when we build our personal brand, it continues to grow with us, I think. I think we continue to expand with new experiences. But it is, Lindsay, how do you want someone to look at you if you're not in the room? I hope they're saying I'm very kind. Being kind is very important to me.
Sure.
For me, integrity is a big thing. I want people to know that that I'm someone that can be counted on to do the right thing, despite how difficult it might be and what stream you're swimming against. It's important to me to be a hard worker and to be somebody that's very, very dependable. So that's something I just feel comfortable with. It's probably from growing up in North Dakota, which we're all very proud of that fact, and from going to UND. But those things are very important to me. But through my life, like I said, you make missteps and you evolve and change. And another thing I might suggest to add on to something that you said was where you emulate people's behavior. Set meetings with them and say, hey, I really admire you. Who doesn't want to have a meeting with somebody that's going to compliment them?
Sure,
it's very flattering.
It is very flattering.
If someone wants to learn from me,
yes, I have never turned down a meeting with somebody that says they want to network or learn from me. And as we need as leaders to take those meetings and help everybody out as much as possible.
And we have a new friend.
Sure,
right.
absolutely.
You have a new
well.
friend.
Yep.
You absolutely have a new friend.
My 3 new besties right here.
with our new show.
Yeah.
Oh man. So we've made a ton of progress for women in the workplace. We've come very far, but there's still a lot more we can do. For instance, women still make 82 cents on the dollar compared to men. We're judged on style rather than measurable objectives more so. We might be overlooked more than we are. And Kim, as you were mentioning to me earlier, we need to get more women into the business school program.
Do we ever?
What did you tell me? There's
Well, twice as many. We have double the male students in our Nistler College that we have as females. And I can tell you after 40 years, having experiences and working in a business is extremely rewarding and gratifying. So we do need more females in the business world. Absolutely.
We do. So, and that's where it starts, is we got to get, we need to feed the program, so we need to feed more women into the college program, which then gets more placement. So it's
more CEOs down the future.
Yes, there's still, what did me and my statistics, I love to throw out things. I believe I read that only 26 or 25% of CEOs in Fortune 500 companies are women. And so there's still a ton of room for growth.
A lot of room.
A lot of room. So what do you think that we can do to, what do you think is still needed to be done? And share with me either from a institutional perspective, your company, or us personally as leaders and friends.
I think you need to sell yourself. We're selling ourselves every day, right? Whether it's is with our family, our work, we're always selling ourselves. So I think we need to show the value proposition, right?
Sure.
We need to show these leaders of our businesses that we work for that we are a valued employee and that we are a rock star for that company, and that we can do more and probably get it done very efficiently and effectively. And we just need to take risks, calculated risks, but we need to take risk. And we also need to challenge ourselves. I challenge myself every day. And I think the more that you challenge yourself outside of your comfort zone, you get more comfortable in a new area, new opportunities that you didn't feel comfortable 2 years ago.
Right.
You grow.
You know, you grow
Yep.
and you take on new challenges. You become more of a risk taker because you want to be noticed and you need to sell yourself.
Right. As was said earlier, I don't know if maybe it wasn't said earlier, but if men only have a half of the requirements for a job, they go ahead and apply for them. But women, we want to be perfect and we want to have everything right, so we wait till we have 100% of the required qualifications for a job before we even apply for it. So yeah, we really, those are some good personal things that we need to lean in. We need to take the chances. We need to really get out there.
Yeah, and to your point, I read that women are hired or promoted based on their experience. Men are hired or promoted based on their potential.
Oh, yep.
And so that just, says that women, we have to have all the experience. We have to have notable successes on our resume in order to get the job we want. Where men, they may not have, all of the experience, but hired based on their potential.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to be more bold, right? We need to be
Yes,
more bold,
yes.
like Kim
But I think
said.
just talking about this and bringing this to the forefront is
Well, and what
is a
boss
start.
doesn't want you to come to them and say, hey, this is my long-term career plan, right? I want to work for this organization and here's how I want to grow, and can you support me in that? I think people would welcome that.
Lead by doing
Sure.
is something that really resonates with me because you need to show the characteristics of being a really good leader. And if you show that enough and you demonstrate that and you're committed to that, I think good things happen.
Absolutely.
Institutionally speaking, I'm really excited about the company I work for, United Health Group, that we've really leaned into diversity and inclusion programs in our hiring, in training. I've seen a lot more training about sexual harassment in the workplace, bias in the workplace, and identifying it, because a lot of times, we talked about this before, that people don't even realize they're being biased. And it's so important for us to recognize that, and I think the training and repetition on that, we usually need to hear things 3 times before we actually can recall it, but doing those things with our organizations really helps open people up to the possibilities, I think.
Yep, and to your point about bias, there is that unconscious bias that we might not even know that we have. And so one thing our company has done is with interviewing or just talking about promotions or salary reviews, I've started to include a diverse group of employees to sit in with me on these interviews, right? So I would include maybe a peer or someone who might be working with the person we're interviewing to get that person's perspective. So when you have a diverse group of perspectives, it hopefully eliminates some of that unconscious bias that we might not even know we have.
I also think it's important for us to continue to sponsor and mentor young students.
Sure.
Mentoring, more of the giving advice, but sponsoring is when you're in a position to affect promotions within your company, that you find women with the potential that you were talking about and give them opportunities to be promoted, and we need to be very active in that. We often hear about the old boys network, but I guess we need the old ladies network. Or whatever we want to call it, but we
Maybe not old ladies, but
We'll think of a better name.
old girl network,
Stay tuned.
old gal network.
I don't want to take that one personally, Mary, but
But we need that. We need to make sure we're advocating and taking the time. And I know that's hard. You guys were talking about how, balancing home and work life with having to take the time to build those relationships. A lot of that responsibility falls on the women. Maybe you could share some of your experiences with that, where you feel this struggle. Kim, you've talked about that too, where you have this push-pull with spending time with your family versus at home.
And now it's grandkids.
And now it's grandkids.
And I don't know that there's ever a right, like we talk about work-life balance, right? Like I don't know if balance is necessarily the right term. I think of it as every time I say a yes, I'm saying no to something else. So I make sure that those yeses, going back to kind of value system and personal brand, those yeses are aligning with what I care about and what I'm passionate about, whether it's volunteering or putting in time at work and family time. And then just not a balance, but realizing that, you know, some weeks you're gonna be home and mom every single night, and then some weeks you're gonna be working late. And I think that's okay to want both and have both. I think you absolutely can.
I think one thing that our company has done that lots of companies are doing now, especially over the past year, is just having a flexible work environment. So it's definitely helped with work-life balance, where, you know, I can be home with the kids, I can go to their events, I can, you know, do the sporting things, and after they go to bed, I'm still able to work from home if needed, or catch up on emails that I might have missed during the day when I was, you know, doing the mom thing.
Right, and haven't we learned a lot during COVID about
was just gonna say,
what the possibilities are?
Great takeaway.
I mean, we've learned that people don't need to be sitting at their desk in their office from 8 to 5 every single day, and that productivity can still happen. I don't know what was your experience during COVID?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like Lindsay, it's sort of just that always having that flexibility. So fortunately, work for a company that provides that, but glad that more are starting to realize the benefit.
Sure.
Yeah, we can't stay with that model of something that's been done for generations, because we do have the technology and the resources and the ability to do that.
I would say in my earlier days in my career, there wasn't that flexibility.
No.
You know, you made the commitment and you were at work and you stayed later when you had projects going on, and now in my job I do a lot of traveling. So that commitment to work is always there. But I think now for you, that younger moms today, I love the idea that there is more flexibility and that there's an awareness from everyone that you can do both. And if you're happy at home, you're happy in the workforce, right? So,
true.
you know, but I don't know if I had that much. I had to rely on my husband he's a farmer, so off times. I mean, it was all or none of him. But, you know, we had to reach out to other friends and, you know, people that we were comfortable that we could utilize to help us raise our kids.
Sure.
You know, it takes a community, right?
Yep, it does.
Whether it's in the workforce, whether it's in the work job, or with your family raising children, it takes a community. So
Absolutely.
having that community of people that you trust, you love to hang around with, helps you too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was also wondering, and would love to hear your perspectives on, what can we women do to help elevate the young women coming into the workforce out of college? We've got several dozen young professionals on the Zoom call with us today. What can we do to help them and outreach to them to help them start their career off right and maybe stay with them throughout their career?
Well, for me, it's hire them.
And even give them an internship, Lindsay.
Internships.
Yeah,
We
there
love
you go.
internships. Yes, we look at internship as a 3-month interview, really,
Yes.
because we you know, get that student for the full summer and kind of see what they can do. So we love internships at Icon.
Yep. And I think mentorship is a big piece, and I know Mary, you'll agree with this, having been a mentor in the past, but I think it's important, and I think effective mentorship too is something that people don't think about, you know, preparing for those mentor meetings, right? Having a list of questions that you want answered, or again, sort of being bold and making that big ask to your mentor. Like maybe you need to be introduced to someone that you don't feel comfortable or don't have a connection with, or maybe you just want to role play a scenario of asking for a salary raise or something like that. I think it's having those mentors that you can rely on, and then in turn kind of giving back in that way too as that evolves.
Right. Getting back to the mentorship program, I have mentored over a dozen young female students at UND, and I feel like I get more out of it than they potentially get out of it. And whether it's sharing my network or my advice or editing with them their resumes, whatever it is, it's so fulfilling. And so I recommend to our friends out in the audience to reach out to Kathy Lund at UND and ask her to be a mentor, and she will be gladly able to.
Kathy is our
can take-
director of the Padkratz Career Development Center and does a great job in helping our students prepare for the workforce, and she helps with the mentoring assignments and helping students find jobs. So it's really great in our college to have a one-stop shop that can help all of our students. So if you're not taking advantage of our Padkratz Career Development Center, I highly recommend that you do so.
I also want to emphasize, we've had lots of conversations for everybody out in the audience, but we women, we need to make sure that we're a mentor and a supporter, not a competitor. So we have to get over that thing where a lot of women, because they feel like the positions at higher levels are scarce, so they guard them very tightly. And we need to let go of that and welcome them and encourage people and coach them. I know, again, getting back to mentorship, my first job out of college, I'm going to give a shout out to Fred Lukens. A lot of people know him as being the CEO and owner of Simmons Advertising. It was my first job in college and right after college. And he really pulled me aside, and he made me feel so confident. And we were talking, and he said, it goes really both ways, Mary, that I enjoyed learning from him, but he enjoyed teaching me, because the students need to reach out, and you need to be eager to learn. You need to be receptive and not threatened by feedback that you get. You need to be proactive in asking for that advice, and the people that are there to help you will be more encouraged to do so. If you are the one that's receiving that well, having a great attitude, wanting to learn more and just be a sponge. And I definitely was that. Most of the basic things about business that I learned in 2 years working for him. He was such a great mentor and help to me, and I'll never forget him. And I'm glad we still have a friendship today. I call him all the time and ask him questions. Maybe it's just to give him a hard time, but whatever.
Sure.
We have a great friendship now.
And to your point about being proactive, maybe the organization you work for doesn't have a formal mentor-mentee program. You got to seek it out. In my first job right out of college, I didn't realize it at the time, but now looking back at it, my boss was my mentor, and that was an invaluable experience for me, being able to, she had maybe 10, 15 years of experience, and I had 0, right? And so I didn't think of her as a mentor at the time, but yeah, it's just bouncing ideas off of her, or hey, I'm experiencing this situation. Am I kind of heading in the right direction here, or am I on the right path? That was key for me. She wasn't my formal mentor, but it was definitely instrumental, I guess, in starting out my career.
That is important with building those mentor relationships. And mentors don't have to be people above you. They can be in different industries or friends. I often, I have a friend I call because I really admire the way she handles delivering tough messages. So I call her often, and we were high school mates, and she goes through it with me and says how she would say it. She's got a very soft, calming voice, and I practice it with her, and we get a chuckle out of it, but it's a nice way to bond. So it doesn't need to be whoever, or you may take style tips from somebody that isn't a boss, like, wow, they really look like they've got it together, and emulating how they dress or they carry themselves, or how somebody is in a sales situation, or their follow through. So you can take mentoring from up, down, sideways.
I think diverse mentorship too, like not only women that you admire, but also men or people, like you said, in different industries. I think everyone can bring, going back to your point again, that different perspective. So it's important to have a wide variety there.
And the mentoring for me is an awareness that goes both ways, as we just mentioned. That, I constantly look for those people that probably indirectly mentor me. They don't realize they're mentoring me.
Right.
But again, I really like to follow their lead, their best practices, and just want to be better at what I do. And then there's those that I mentor, that some of them I know directly that I'm mentoring them, and have had those formal relationships, but there's a lot of them that are informal as well. And I take great pride in helping share experiences and gaining trust and building relationships with people. And it's okay to fail. It's okay to try something that doesn't work and back up and try something else. They also know that I love a challenge. So, if I get a challenge presented to me, it's like, I want to figure this out. I really enjoy the opportunity to get to know people because I really enjoy working with people.
Absolutely.
So, a mentor can be somebody that provides advice or gives you support or cheers you on and things like that. But again, we need the students or those who are the mentees to be proactive and be clear about what you need help with, and think through that before you go and meet with your mentors, because you don't want to waste their time. You want to have the meeting be as effective for you as possible, and talk with them. Maybe you have a pre-conversation and say, these are the things I'm looking for. Is that something you think you can provide? And maybe if they're not, don't don't give up, go find somebody else.
As you said earlier, Lindsay, they need to be prepared.
Yep.
Because I've had many students come into the office and say, I want to move to Denver. Can you find me a job? You know, and sure, I'll try. I'll help you as much as I can. But you got to give me a little more to work with, you know? Give me a little more information. Have you updated your resume? Have you volunteered? Have you done an internship? What experiences can you draw on that will set you apart from others that are applying for that job? Now, we know UND is a family. There's no doubt about that. I hear all the time from leaders in different industries that if there is an application of a UND student looking for a job, that moves to the top of the pile. It's just it just happens.
It just happens.
It's a really tight, I can't describe it, but it's a tight family that UND has, which is wonderful for all of the students looking for jobs. But you got to be prepared when you come in and see me or one of my new besties here. You need to be ready to take on that responsibility of understanding what it is you're looking for. I can't do that for you.
No, and to your point, Kim, it's very tempting to, as a mentee, to just kind of hit that easy button and my mentor has all the answers, and they probably do, right?
Right.
They have all the answers in their head, but it's very easy to just go to them for everything. But you gotta make your own decisions. You gotta learn from your mistakes, and be prepared when you're having that conversation with your mentor. If you're stuck, come with solutions, right? Come with this is where I think I'm headed. Am I on the right track, or can you kind of steer me in the right way?
Right.
But don't just hit that easy button and go to them for everything, because that's how they learned is from their mistakes. And
That's right.
And you got to kind of dive in and be bold there.
Well, and I think as a mentor too, you can take on and challenge that a little bit too.
Yes,
Like
sure.
sometimes when I'm in that scenario, I will challenge that and say, A, how can I specifically help? But then what are you going to do, right? And we kind of come up with a game plan together of, okay, here's the steps that this person is going to take, and here's what I'm going to do, and how does it fit together to accomplish whatever goal that they're looking to
That
achieve.
tough love is important.
Yes, absolutely,
it is.
'cause
You want them
growth.
to develop the muscles to think through a solution to a problem rather than always depending on you
Yeah.
to solve that for them, and I think that's important.
Right.
Which leads me to, you guys were kind of alluding to building relationships at work. So not just with mentors, but with other people. We got some questions before the summit started of people saying, hey, I'm really an introvert, I'm really uncomfortable, networking is very uncomfortable for me. And Lindsay, I think you're one of those people. So tell us what you do in light of the fact that you're not comfortable. Most of us
sure.
aren't comfortable going to a
No.
networking event and just striking up a conversation. But
No, the word networking kind of makes me cringe. I just think of just being just super awkward and going to a network event with my business cards in my hand, and you're
Right.
typically alone, right? And you enter a room and everyone's already in their conversations, and how do you kind of sneak your way into these conversations? And it just doesn't seem genuine to me, I guess. And so many people thrive in that world, and that's just not me. So, but it's still important in the business world to build these relationships. So how do you do it without
Right.
without going to these events? And I think one thing I did is whose career do you admire, or who's someone that you admire? Email them, give them a call, ask if you could have maybe an informal
coffee.
with them. Take them out for lunch, for coffee, and ask about their career. People love talking about their career and what they've done. Ask about that, and then keep in touch with them as you kind of enter the workforce, and you're building that relationship with them, and they might be able to connect you with other people, and that to me is so much more comfortable than a networking event. Also, I've used, this is such a millennial response, but LinkedIn has been, it feels much more comfortable to me to make those connections from behind my computer screen. And it's worked,
Hey.
it's worked. And I've actually hired lots of people through LinkedIn, because that's, it's a good way to connect and start
is,
to build those relationships.
And you're proving that there's more than one way to get to the finish line.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
I think for me, it's a lot about vulnerability too. And I know we talked a little bit about this where, I don't go home and I put on my mom hat and then I'm a mom. And then I go to work and I'm like,
Right.
okay, I'm putting on my attorney hat. Now I'm an attorney, right? You're one person sort of all the time. So I think just having that vulnerability with people has helped me immensely build relationships. I think coming out of college and into the workforce, kind of just seeing, there was always this mentality to just work, right? And you didn't necessarily take time to get to know people as humans or outside of what they do at work. So I think that mindset shift for me with being more vulnerable has helped me to build relationships and be more successful.
Absolutely.
Now, I don't use LinkedIn, so now I'm old school, right?
You got to get on LinkedIn, Kim.
I know.
Our your new besties will help you with that.
Okay, good. You know, but relationships are very important to me. That's been my entire career, is building relationships.
Right, you
and,
have a whole career of building relationships.
and being confident in being able to help them and being consistent with my messaging. And, you know, relationships, I value relationships. And all that we really have is our integrity, you know, and so I don't want to burn bridges. I certainly, you know, want to make sure that relationships grow. I can't tell you the connections that have come out of relationships, whether it be new opportunities in the work that I do in the Nistler College, or it be new friendships. You know, it's really amazing. I truly enjoy being around people and getting to know them. So, you know, building that trust and being able to help people is, I think, a lot of what we women like to do.
We like to help.
Absolutely. And you never know when you can help that person or when
Right.
they can help you. I mean, it's kind of a two-way street. So it's very important to take those opportunities.
Well, I think volunteering, to
Yeah.
piggyback off what you were saying, is a fantastic way to network, and joining boards. And they don't
Yes.
need to be boards of companies. They can be boards of a
Committees.
theater, committees. They can be at work or outside of work. You know, I volunteered on the board of the business school for several years,
Yes.
and in the community I found through that was very rewarding, and you get to know them on a more personal basis. And when you're volunteering to help a greater cause, that really brings people together. And I think that's a huge non-threatening way to go about it. Plus, you are able to flex some other muscles and learn some new skills that you may not have gotten in the workplace. And I think that that's really important, because, you know, and going back to work, I feel like a lot of your satisfaction at work comes from the relationships and the people that you are surrounded by.
Absolutely.
And we've all been there. You work with people that maybe you don't get along with as well, and work becomes very dissatisfying. But when you're with a good group of people, it becomes extremely gratifying. And so to build those relationships at work, for people that are shy, volunteer for, put your hand up for projects that they're looking for people to work on, or ask if you can collaborate, or ask if you can help. And then also, people want to be with you more if you're someone they can count on, and you deliver, and you're there for them, and you're positive at the workplace, and have a positive attitude and an engaging learning attitude. I think it's very important. So. No other last points? We talked ourselves out, and we're getting ready to turn it back over to Amy. What do you think? Do you have any famous last words, any of you? It's okay if you don't.
Gosh.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us, and I'm hoping that we're starting and inspiring you all to get out there and support other women and start conversations. It doesn't matter if they're over dinner or at work or with a friend. Just start having conversations and learning from each other. And so with that, I want to turn it back over to Amy, because she is going to introduce our keynote speaker, who I'm very excited about. Carin, I have to, just as a little plug for her, Carin Anderson is a senior vice president with Minnesota Wild. And in my job, I work to buy sponsorships from a variety of different sports entities, whether they be college, pro, semi-pro. And of the hundreds I've dealt with, she is literally the only female at that level of position overseeing partnerships for the sports teams that we deal with. So she's always been very inspiring to me. And so I'm really excited for you all to hear her story.
Wow. Thank you guys so much. What a good conversation. I think we could go on, and our students and alumni would learn so much from you and your experiences. So thank you, Kim, Sarah, Lindsay, and Mary, for the idea that we could have this roundtable discussion. And I think the lessons are so valuable that we teach in the classroom, but now to extend them to also practical usage and experiences that you guys have had is so impactful to our students. So I'm very appreciative of your time. One thing that was occurring to me as you were talking is a lot about integrity. And each of the four of you mentioned integrity at some point in your conversation, and I think that's a key attribute of any leader, and particularly impactful as a female leader. I think authenticity and character highlights the potential for leadership and makes others feel more comfortable in following you as a leader. So great lessons for our students. So thank you all so much. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Carin Anderson, who is the keynote speaker for today's event. Carin may not be a UND graduate, but she does know a lot about something that most UND graduates are very fond of, and that is hockey, right? And she's a great leader. So both of those things we love a lot around here. Carin is in her 24th year with the Minnesota Wild. She currently serves as the Senior Vice President of Corporate Partnerships and Retail Management. And as Mary mentioned, she's one of the few women to hold this type of a position across the country. She successfully directs the sales development and the growth for all of the Wilds and Xcel Energy Centers, corporate partnerships, and the premium seating suites. Carin has been instrumental in fostering key corporate relationships with Xcel Energy, Wells Fargo, Anheuser-Busch, Coca-Cola, Treasure Island Resort, Anderson Windows, Polaris, and so many more corporations. Carin is a native of North Branch, Minnesota, and received a business degree with an emphasis in finance from the University of Minnesota's Carlson School of Management. We're so thrilled to have Carin be with us this afternoon and share her perspectives on how to be bold and to shine as a leader.
Thank you for that nice introduction and for asking me to participate in the Be Bold UND Women in Leadership Summit. I am excited to be sharing with you all today and want to thank proud UND alums Mary Fisher and Laura Arneson for collaborating with me today on what I could contribute to this day. It is so good to see UND and Nistler College offering content such as this workshop for future leaders such as yourself. Taking advantage of and hearing from those with experience is so beneficial and allows you to create your path with knowledge. Speaking of proud UND alums, I work with several. In fact, my senior vice president counterpart here, Mitch Helgerson, is a Nistler College alum with a degree in finance. When I was sharing with him what I was doing, I asked, who are the other UND alums? Because I feel like I'm completely surrounded by them here in the office. His response was quick, we are a proud bunch, Carin. Now, you likely recognize a couple of our more notable UND connections. First, current Minnesota Wild and former Olympian, Zach Parisi, who's had a great career here prior to us with the New Jersey Devils, and obviously before that with the UND Fighting Hawks. Now, I know it was something else before, but now you're the Fighting Hawks. Secondly, a member of the inaugural Minnesota Wild 2000-2001 team, Brad Bombadier, who is still with the organization today as our Director of Player Development. I love them all, and we all share the common fondness for being decked out in green. Now, for me, I truly learned to appreciate the pride of the University of North Dakota when I attended the University of Minnesota. The storied hockey rivalry between the two schools is unmatched. I miss it, and trust me, the Xcel Energy Center definitely misses the annual WCHA Final Five tournament in St. Paul, where 5 of the best teams in the WCHA, North Dakota was always one of them, as the U of M usually was as well, came down and competed for the conference title. Such fun times. Like Mitch, my degree emphasis is finance as well. While in college, I worked for the men's athletic department. Yes, back then they had both men's and women's athletic departments. And upon degree completion, the then director of marketing, Sean Hunter, asked me to join him full-time as a marketing assistant. This support role turned out to be truly pivotal in my decision to focus on a career in sports and entertainment. After spending 7 years in marketing and promotion and getting to experience and learn about the ins and outs of the Division I college athletic system, I got the opportunity of a lifetime. You see, Sean, who had originally hired me, had moved on and was the president of the Arizona Coyotes. when he called one day quizzing me about the idea of the NHL returning to Minnesota after a 7-year absence. For those of you who may or may not know, prior to the Minnesota Wild, a team in the NHL called the Minnesota North Stars was played in Bloomington, Minnesota. Well, I must have done okay on this pop quiz because soon after, he introduced me to a gentleman named Jack Spurn, who was working with then St. Paul Mayor Norm Coleman and Minnesota businessman Bob Nagley Jr. And they were on the heels of making a historical announcement just 2 weeks later. That announcement was that the NHL returned and would start to play in the year 2000. I was asked to join the team as its first full-time employee. The opportunity to be involved in not only a business startup, but professional hockey in Minnesota was way too good to pass up. And here I am today, 24 years older. I tell people they hired me when I was 16, and one of the proudest days of my career behind me, the inaugural game between the Minnesota Wild and the Philadelphia Flyers in October of 2000. 4 or 5 maturations of my position later, and now I lead 3 main business units for the Minnesota Wild and Xcel Energy Center. 1, corporate partnerships, 2, premium sales, and the 3rd, retail operations. So corporate partnerships. The easiest way to describe this area, or at least how my kids tell their friends what I do, is this is a team that puts stickers on dashboards and logos on everything. But seriously, the purpose of this area is to forge partnerships with companies and brands that want to leverage the visibility and the brand equity of the Minnesota Wild and the Xcel Energy Center to further their own brand affinity in the market and amongst consumers. So conversely, besides corporations wanting to be associated with the Minnesota Wild wants to be associated with blue chip corporate brands. Key partners for us include Xcel Energy, Anheuser-Busch, Coca-Cola, Polaris, Anderson Windows, Ecolab, Securian Financial, and many more. Premium seat sales. This team works tirelessly to find corporations of all sizes and affluent individuals to invest in either an annual suite or a loge or something in between at the Xcel Energy Center. These investments operate much like lease space, and they include all events at the arena. Lastly, retail operations. This area is totally the really fun stuff. This group manages and operates all the Hockey Lodge locations in the arena and online. And up until this past year, we had a couple mall locations as well. The operations include staffing and running the stores during games and regular store hours. And obviously, everybody knows the internet is 24 hours a day. We also source our own goods. And no, they do not let me anywhere near that buying decision. And that's a good thing. So how does one get here? Well, my answer is by being bold, having confidence, and knowing that relationships matter. There are many actions you can practice, develop, and leverage over time to help mold you into a bold leader. For me, some of these come more natural than others. And the others, they require attention every day for me to make the impact I need to and want to. Consider these actions as opportunities for you as you shape your path. Own your career choice. You dreamed of this, you studied for it, and you accepted a position. Love it until you don't, and then pivot. Trust your skills. Believe in yourself, know your strengths, and showcase them. Be assertive. You will not always be asked, so make sure you find ways to be heard. Support your coworkers. Remember this always. All boats rise with the tide. Cultivate friendships. At first, this might sound unnecessary, but it is important to realize the value of having others champion you and wanting to see you succeed. Avoid getting easily offended. This is not about that obvious, inappropriate behavior that should always be reported, but more about the everyday nuances of working with people brought together from different places. Don't allow yourself to overthink every single action of coworkers is negative towards you or something you did. Someone else's reaction is rarely about you. It's about what's going on with them. This is really important. Try hard to remember that. Lastly, find mentors, formally or informally. Just seek out the expertise of someone who's been there and can help explain the whys, the hows, and the what for to you. That's important. All of these traits and actions will help build confidence. Being bold will help build your confidence. Speaking of confidence, oftentimes I'm asked, hey, what's it like working in sports surrounded predominantly by men? Is it hard to be seen, to be heard, to have credibility? It is sports after all. Well, much has changed in the 24 years relative to a woman's ability to be included in the water cooler conversation around last night's game. Today, I am comfortable leading that conversation, and I do it with conviction. To get there, though, I had to pick up a few things along the way to figure out how to establish myself amongst my male team members in a positive way. First, didn't allow myself to get interrupted. This sounds easy, right? Just use some body language, show you're mad, sigh loud, pout, right? Well, I learned pretty quick that that was definitely the wrong road to take. Over time, though, I learned to stop these situations by making statements in the moment, such as, hey, I appreciate that. Let me finish my thought, and then I'd love to hear yours. Be subtle, be inclusive, but don't be allowed to be bypassed. Another tip, make sure you get credit for things that you deserve to get credit for without making a scene. If an idea takes off and it was yours, but not necessarily being characterized as such, acknowledge your involvement in that moment. An example might be, hey, I am so glad you liked my idea when we met, and we are finding a way to further develop it. This is great. And then lastly, support other women. Treat other women as allies, not the competition. Always address conflict directly and cheer each other on. These relationships do and will matter, and they set an example for others throughout the organization. Again, relationships matter. So a key to building and forging relationships is communication. I'm sure we've all heard this before, but I just can't stress it enough. Communication is always key. Your ability to communicate clearly will matter. Be open, be concise, be clear in your statements, your questions, and your point of view. Also, in addition to communicating clearly, part of cultivating friendships, either internal with coworkers or external with business partners, is listening. Think of that small child who continually asks, why? Be that child, all grown up, of course, and ask questions, lots of them. Genuinely take interest in those who you are forming relationships with. Restate their answers back to them to help commit it to your memory, but also so they know you heard them. It matters that they know you care and that you are truly interested. And on the flip side of that relationship process is your willingness to give yourself to the relationship as well. Share information about yourself. Let that coworker or partner get to know you. I promise building relationships matter to your success from the very first position you have to when you're CEO or owning your own business. It's not easy, and oftentimes it takes time to build the relationships, to build the trust, but it will result in your voice being heard, and you will have a powerful presence amongst your coworkers, your partners, and quite honestly, in everyday life. These relationships, strong and fortified, allows you to take chances. And by taking chances, you grow and you move up. A chance I took in my career was to move into what I largely do today, sales management and leadership. Having and gaining the confidence to lead others was all new and honestly scary to me at the time. Actually, still kind of scary to me some days. I was directing people in sales position, a position I never really held myself. And for a long time, I battled the perception of not being qualified with enough sales experience to lead this unit. This primarily came from those reporting to me who have a plethora of sales experience and honestly are so good at it. Or so I thought. This is where the perception came. Truth be told, this perception came from me and the voices inside my head and my lack of confidence at the time. You see, when you manage others, you hold all their goals and aspirations in your hands. And it's a delicate balance to motivate, inspire, and hold those folks accountable to the results you need, your organization needs, and quite honestly, they need. Admittedly, being that leader has had a rocky road at times. But the more I have come to own the position with both my strengths and my flaws, the more comfortable and quite honestly enjoyable it has become. I now relish working on being the best leader to my teams as I can. Where at first it was uncomfortable and agonizing, those direct conversations, those conflicts. But I am so proud of the retention I've had amongst my teams over the years, the ability to overcome their doubts, really my doubts, and the common purpose we all share. So, to come full circle with the discussion today on being bold and leadership, let me leave you with this. Being bold builds confidence. Bold leaders have admirable and sought-after traits, clear priorities, effectively know and communicate the goals, have a willingness to speak up, be heard, build momentum, motivate, inspire, and bring energy every single day. Pair action with knowledge. Celebrate and recognize all wins, big or small. Appreciate experience gained through failure. This allows you to take risks and you grow through that experience. And lastly, own your strengths and your flaws. I've enjoyed sharing parts of my story and the knowledge gained through the career that I would not trade for the world. I so look forward to joining you all for the conversation coming up next. Thank you so much for letting me be part of your day, and best of luck to you in your future careers and UND in the NCAA Hockey Frozen Four tournament. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carin, for such an engaging and thought-provoking presentation. Unfortunately, the hockey didn't turn out just like we wanted, so we're still a little painful about that. But we're very grateful for the time you have shared with us and the insightful perspectives that you bring to this conversation. So we would now like to spend some time in a Q&A format to hear from our audience about what questions they may have for Carin and for our Hultberg panelists. Please enter your questions in the Q&A function, and we will do our very best to address as many as we can together. Let's get started. We'll kick it off with our first pre-submitted question. So I'll send this to the panel. What is one piece of advice that you received from a woman in your professional career that has stuck with you throughout your career?
Ooh, I have a good one right off the bat. I was taught very young in my 20s that if you don't ask, you don't get. And that is so true, even when you're negotiating for a car. So you got to, right? You got to just get out there and ask for what you want. Be bold.
I think one piece of advice I received that has stuck with me is there's never going to be precisely the right time to say something or to share an idea or to take a risk. And so don't let the fear of, I don't think I'm ready, or I don't think I'm, prepared enough, get in the way of doing something, because that opportunity is going to pass you by. And, don't let perfect get in the way of really, really good.
Yep, I
Well
agree
said.
with that.
Well
Yep,
said.
I think beautiful things come when you do something before you're ready. Like, I think that's just a good tie into that.
Thank you, guys. Carin, I would like to ask this one of you, since you're in a unique industry, where, as we said, you're the only female in a position such as yours. What's the most important risk you've taken? And can you talk about why you took it and what you learned from it?
Hi, everybody. Thanks again for having me. When it comes to risks, I think, I mentioned it a bit in the keynote, but it was really, and I believe the panel talked about it earlier, it was really putting yourself out there, making, stretching outside your comfort zones relative to, where you're comfortable. The risk I took when I was willing to take on leadership of areas that I hadn't necessarily grown up on, or grown up through, if you will, was daunting. But yet, as you guys can all imagine, being attached to revenue drivers in any company is a pretty important opportunity, or area of opportunity for your career track. So I just felt like, from a risk perspective, in an ability to grow perspectives, particularly in this industry that I'm in, getting myself attached and overseeing one of the larger revenue drivers of our company was the risk that was going to help me kind of position my career going forward. And so getting comfortable with the idea of running the sales management side of the corporate partnerships was definitely has been a risk worth taking. But again, it has, especially when I was just getting going on there, it had a bit of some fits and starts, if you will. But you just have to keep, all I would say was just to keep plowing through it, keep leaning on people who have been there before, and ask questions and learn from your mistakes too.
Thanks so much. To follow up on that, Carin, if you had to start over, knowing what you know now, after such an illustrious and established career that you've had, what is something you would do differently, and why?
Yeah, I would work on being bold earlier. Again, I think the panel spoke to it a little bit earlier, is sitting and letting others give their thoughts, and being too timid or unsure of myself early on probably led to a kind of longer wait time, if you will, in moving forward and up and getting noticed. And so I would, if I knew what I know now about how to get noticed and how to create a presence without being disruptive, if I knew that earlier, I would be all about that, kind of focusing on creating a presence and being seen, not being over here in the corner, if you will.
Thank you so much. We've talked a lot about female leaders today and compared their experiences to our male counterparts. And I was speaking with the panel a little bit earlier, and we all mentioned that we have had wonderful male leaders who have mentored us and developed us. And one of the panel members said, the opportunity for those leaders to teach other males how to be supportive of female leadership is also a really unique opportunity that is welcome in today's workplace. So in speaking about that, I'll throw this question to the panel about, can you describe a challenge that you've encountered as a female leader that your male counterparts are not often faced with, and how you overcame this, and what advice you'd give to younger female leaders?
Anybody want to start? Don't I'll
I
speak
will.
alone. Okay.
I would say a lot of my male counterparts have become very good golfers during their careers. You know, they felt that they had the time to get out there and have that camaraderie in golfing. I've never had that time where I felt that I could take that 3 or 4 hours and spend an afternoon at the golf course. I'd love to be outdoors doing that, but I had either work to get done and completed before the end of the day, or I had responsibilities at home, groceries, children, you know, things that were additional responsibilities, picking up dry cleaning, whatever it might be. But I just felt that there were so many times where I think the men have more flexibility with their schedule than I might have.
Yep. I think mine would be the natural confidence. When I talk to men who have mentored me, they're like, why are you thinking about all that stuff that's like in your mind? Like, you know what you want, be confident, get out there and go for it. And I think as women, it takes a little bit longer. Like, we have to give ourselves that boost, that self-talk of saying like, hey, I got this, I can do it. And maybe for men, it's more of a natural confidence.
How about you, Lindsay?
I think just talking about children in the workplace even, and kind of that work-life balance. I don't think men really have to think much about that. And you know, when I'm talking about picking up the kids from daycare, I gotta get out of this meeting if, you know, by 5:15 I gotta get the kids. And I don't know, I try to kind of hide that when I'm talking with men in the workplace because I don't want them to look at me, you know, as a mom. I want them to see me as a professional, but I don't think that's something men think about.
Another thing, just to throw out a snarly topic, is sexual harassment in the workplace is something that often, not that men don't encounter it, but I think it happens more to the female set. And that's always a very difficult thing to deal with and manage. That is there a right answer or a right way to handle it? No, but it is a sticky situation, I think, to deal with in the workplace.
I think it's interesting as you guys are talking particularly about the total role of the female leader in the workplace. And so speaking about being a mother and a spouse and everything else that's expected of you, you know, I personally know that I'm a better leader because of my son and my husband and the perspective they bring. But I think often males have a harder time expressing some of those considerations. So they may have them, to your point, Lindsay, but can they necessarily feel free to express them? After about a year in this role, I had one of my male leaders send me a note of how much he appreciated the understanding of family responsibilities and family expectations and balancing those in his role as a leader, and that we acknowledged that out of my office. And I was very proud of that, and that we do think about that a lot as female leaders, and that our male counterparts may need more, you know, support in that area than we necessarily realize. And so embracing that totality of the leader as a whole person, I think is helpful to all of us. So I think that's a great perspective to bring to the table, so that, you know, you don't have to be worried about saying, oh, I really got to get out of here because I need to pick up, you know, my kid at daycare, and then you're tearing in there, at least I have, at the last minute, and paying the extra $10 a minute or whatever, because I mean, my favorite example would be the days I was supposed to pick my little guy up, and versus the days my husband was. Oftentimes my husband would get a call and say, is anyone picking him up today? So balancing all those perspectives and the freedom to acknowledge that, I think is huge in the development of younger leaders, both male and female. Carin, we had a question from the Q&A that says, I am a woman also in the sports industry, and so what are some obstacles you have faced that you think are unique to our industry?
Yeah, I think, okay. I think, you know, as I think about the obstacles, and like what, you know, when Mary was so kind to say about being one of the only female leaders in this area, I think part of our industry challenge in the sports and entertainment industry is the grind of the actual industry itself. As you go through your evolution, you know, as a person, right, from young person to, you know, perhaps married, perhaps having children, it really is hard to have have it all and that totality, especially I would say now having done this, and my children are 18 and 16, but I will tell you from about age 0 to 15 was really, oftentimes really hard. They're just the expectation and the grind of our industry. It's not only 9 to 5, it's, 5 to 10, 5 to 11 nights, weekends, holidays. So you never get to feel like you have a normal pattern to your life. And it does require sacrifices of time that you would normally be doing things outside of with family life or what have you, that you're at a game or you're doing this or that. And I think that creates obstacles from a female leadership perspective of, do I want to stay in this industry? Is this industry for me? What's the light at the end of the tunnel for me if I plow through it? Because are there more rewarding careers outside of the industry? I think that those have been the challenges and obstacles in the past. I think more and more there are females coming in and are in the business, and we will be seeing many more emerge as leaders because there are these barriers of breaking down. Like I think you guys were talking about it when I first went on maternity. I was the first maternity leave at our company, for example, and it was almost one of those things back then that you almost hid that you were a mom and a child, because it got in the way of having presence and the right presence and whatnot. And that was 24 years ago. Now you come in, and if you're, maternity leave, paternity leave, everything is so much farther progressed, and that is all a good thing. I'm very excited when I know what my first when I negotiated my first maternity leave to what young women do today in our industry, in our office. It's night and day, and I just cheer it. I just find that you can own those things now. We're back 24 years ago or longer. It wasn't the same. It wasn't accepted the same way, and we've progressed. We've progressed as a society, and that is good. So some of those things are obstacles that probably aren't in our industry, my industry anymore. I would say that is it. I would say initially too, and I talked a little bit of it on the video, having the credibility around sport, right? If we're talking specifically about sport, can you hold a conversation with other male executives that sounds credible coming out of, this is stereotyping, but out of a female's voice about last night's hockey game or that basketball game or the football game, or did you see that, or why was that trade, etc. Again, several years ago, I would say men didn't, it was pretty hard to be considered a worthy conversation partner there. Now, I would say that's not in existence. So I think that the many obstacles that maybe were there when I started, and perhaps my generation of women have moved on, aren't the same challenges that are there now, outside of just the overall schedule and grind of what this industry does. So I probably rambled, and I apologize for that, but hope that was helpful.
Nope, no rambling at all. It was very helpful. And Mary mentioned during the panel discussion about unintentional biases and also microaggressions, things that aren't intentional, right, that can still impact our perceptions as a female leader and how we think others are presenting themselves to us. And I don't know about you guys, but often, I don't even notice those things. And I'll be telling an example to a fellow dean who's a male, or to my husband, and they'll say, wait a minute, that nobody would say that to a man. And I think in some regards, we get used to some of it, and we don't even notice it to a certain extent, or we expect it, so it's not out of place to us in some ways. So I'd like for the panel to think about sometime when you knew very deliberately, when you could tell that there was a barrier occurring to you because you were a woman, and how you handled that, whether you addressed it head on, whether you addressed it in a different way, but what your perspective is on how you maybe confronted that hindrance to your career.
I would say it happened a long time ago, and it goes back to talking about being on maternity leave. And I went on maternity leave, and there wasn't the communication with me that some of my colleagues that I felt were probably pretty much at the same level got promoted while I was gone. And I'll never forget it. I mean, it just didn't seem right that at least I wasn't communicated before I came back. I come back off of maternity and they've been promoted. I hadn't been, nor did I know about it. And, you know, you can go two different ways with that. You can be bitter, or you can say, you know, dig deeper. I know I am as worthy to be promoted as they were. So that's exactly what I did. I thought, I'm not going to be upset for too long. I'm not going to be bitter about the situation, because those women deserved that opportunity to be promoted. But so did I. And taking a maternity leave, I don't think was a fair reason. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to show them. And within not too long, I got promoted, and I ended up supervising those people later. So it's how you respond to things of adversity or things that you don't think were treated quite right. The way you respond, the way that you make it better for you. And I was determined to get a promotion, and I ended up supervising. So but I'll never forget that situation. It made me stronger and more bold.
Absolutely. And I've never experienced that like you, Kim, in the workplace, but I think it's being proactive about it too. I work in banking, which is predominantly male dominated industry. So I think it's just, again, being bold and having those conversations surrounding, like, this is what my career path is, and asking your superiors to support you in that.
Yes.
And to kind of piggyback off of what Kim was saying, this wasn't something that happened to me personally, but I was involved in the conversation. We had interviewed a female. She just gotten married, and she was the right fit for the job. She was great, but the comment was made from a male leader that, well, you know, she just got married. She'll probably be starting a family soon. So he was, and it wasn't malicious, but it was, you know, he was thinking ahead and thinking, well, this person's going to be on maternity leave for, you know, 3 months, and she might not be the right person for the job. And so it was a good teachable moment for me to work with him.
There.
Yeah, to work with him and say, you know, that's not something we can consider when we're determining who to hire here. She's the right fit for the job, and we can always, you know, hire a temporary worker if this you know is a situation we're faced with, or it's a great opportunity to cross train team members to pick up work when, you know, if she's out for any reason. So it was a good teachable moment there.
Thank you. Lindsay, when you talk about that, I thought about an experience I had some years back where there was a promotion opportunity, and Kim, like you, I was kind of offended that I wasn't thought I wasn't considered for it, and made a little bit of that known, but I was told, well, wait a minute, we didn't think you would want that because you just got married a few months ago. And so, you know, I don't know if one of my male counterparts would have had the same conversation brought forth to them. So it was just, sometimes when that's happening, you can't really kind of believe it's happening, and so maybe you get a little confused about how to respond. At least I did it, because I was just so surprised that even became part of the conversation. So, Carin, I know you've interviewed and hired a lot of people, I'm sure. So how do you recommend that females stand out in the job interview process?
Yeah, I think part of it is all like all the things that you all already know, right? Your body language, and your presence and your confidence, but really, you know, share why this position is so interesting to you, why you want to do it, what makes it matter. For me, when I'm hiring salespeople, and my business, the corporate partner business, is a relationship business. So I really need to understand your approach to relationships, your ability to listen and retain and ask questions, and then be able to articulate what it is. So I think honestly, when I'm the folks that keep me interested in me wanting to hire them are those who are definitely show confidence in themselves, find reasons to reach out to me, even if I'm not hiring, but not always have to have it be about coming to work for the Wild. Demonstrate to me that you're aware of the industry, or aware of current topics that are affecting our industry, or the Wild, or the Xcel Energy Center, or St. Paul at the time. Help me know that you're keeping an eye on everything moving around, that you're in it for all those reasons, and not just I'll come do anything and work for the Wild, right? Like you can imagine in our business and in sports, there's a lot of that. So for us, it's being able to stand out outside yourself. And I will tell you, for all you young emerging leaders out there, this industry would love more females in it. There are many attributes that women have that would aid tremendously to the whole relationship business and the sports business. So from my perspective and from my industry, I would just say, the more interest you take and your willingness to want to be a relationship builder person, you're going to stand out. But confidence, and that's all in how you articulate, your body language, and your presence. That's what I would say.
Thanks so much. We have a question from a student in the Q&A function that I think is particularly interesting. I'll share it with the panel because I would love to hear their perspectives. But she mentioned, I have asked women I look up to serve as a mentor to me and have lunch or coffee. And she said, I felt it went pretty well. But how do you take it to the next level and ask them to be your mentor? And then maybe uncomfortably, what do you do if they turn you down?
I would say a big thing with finding a mentor is a lot of times people are put off by that direct question of, will you be my mentor? And maybe give it time to grow organically in and of itself. So rather than just have a meeting and then say, will you be my mentor? Volunteer to help that person with some special projects, or attend their meetings, follow them on LinkedIn and learn more about that person, and build a relationship outside of asking them, because they may feel like, oh, that takes a lot of time, or that ask feels like there's a big expectation. And then also be clear in your mind what you define as a mentor relationship that you need, so that you can convey that to them when you're having that conversation. I think would be very helpful, because it may not be as vast of a time commitment for the mentor as you intended to be. So I would make that communication clear.
Great point. And I think Kim had mentioned it during the panel that informal mentors are can add value as well. So just having that informal relationship with that person, maybe you do coffee again, or maybe, like you said, add them to LinkedIn and do volunteer work with them, or whatever that might look like. But it doesn't need to be a formal relationship for you to still gain value from that person.
And a hard thing is you take it personally and you feel embarrassed if they say no.
Sure.
And you just have to grow tough skin and just don't take it personally. It probably has nothing to do with you and more about they've probably got home commitments, or they're already mentoring 3 other people. So don't let that bother you, and just go find some other people, and look laterally above and below, because they can come from anywhere.
And I think when the time is right for that mentor-mentee relationship to be more formal, I think you both will feel it. It won't be just one of you asking. I think you're both going to know when it makes sense that you want to continue to build that relationship with each other, because both of you have a lot to add to the relationship, that there's value for both of you. So I think it has to be a win-win for both. And I also think that you need to come in with your expectations of what you want to see that mentor do for you, so that you can agree upon that as well, so that there's no disappointment on either side.
I think those are great points. I believe Sarah mentioned earlier many of the mentorships that she has benefited from were informal, and maybe the mentor didn't even necessarily realize they were serving in that role. So maybe sometimes if you ask somebody to be a mentor, they might feel intimidated by it or feel like there's a stronger commitment than they necessarily have the time for. Because Sarah said earlier that whenever you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. And so I agree with Mary's point that it's not necessarily about you, and not to take it personally if they turn you down, but look for those opportunities to have mentors who may not even realize they're being mentors. I mean, Kim Woods on our panel is a great example. From my perspective, is she probably has no idea how much I've learned from her. And watching her do her job and be successful. So look for those opportunities of people you respect and that you think are doing things well, and simply observe them, and you don't have to ask for the actual formal relationship to be put in place. Carin, how would you suggest that females stand out in this Zoom environment right now, particularly when networking is taking such a very different perspective and a very different way right now?
Yeah, good question. And we've all had practice over the last year, right, of learning how to be over virtual. I would just reiterate, it's harder, I think, than in a conference room or what have you, to be able to get your hand raised and whatnot. But when you need to speak or you want to have it known. But my recommendation would be, especially if you're leading the Zoom meeting, but even if you're not, is to seek out the agenda beforehand, so you can, I think the panel had a nice piece about this, about being prepared, practicing and whatnot for your meetings. And I will tell you, I even, as long as I've been, I've never practiced more for meetings than I did this past year, because you're looking at yourself on the screen and whatnot, but you also, I don't know about all of you guys, but our meetings seemed like it was back to back to back to back. So, you didn't have, if it was a 30-minute meeting, it was a 30-minute meeting, not 45-minute meeting or the hallway conversations that you'd have in the office. So you had to be prepared. You had to know that what you wanted to say, what your point was. And I just found that getting the agenda ahead of time, if it wasn't distributed to me, asking the person who's organizing the meeting for that information ahead of time helps tremendously. And then if you are leading the meeting, set an agenda, and then you make sure that you run the meeting, you start it and you stop it when you say you're going to. I think that a lot of respect is built amongst how you can conduct yourself in meetings and your presence that way. And so, and probably doubly so on the virtual side, since most people have been doing it now kind of nonstop for a year. But a preparation and then knowing what you need to contribute to the meeting and what you need to get out of it, and then making sure you're heard with those pieces would be the important pieces, I would say.
And I would echo what you say about the context is missing a bit in the Zoom format because it's a much more rigid environment. So the context of what you communicate and how you communicate it is very different. And so there's a lot of understanding of another person as a leader and as a colleague that is hard to pick up on in today's Zoom context. So as students, as you move into the workplace, to be aware of the different demands and different expectations depending upon the context. So we could talk all day between Carin and our wonderful panel and the examples and the experiences that they're sharing with us, but I think we're out of time. So I would like to thank Carin, Mary, Kim, Sarah, and Lindsay for your commitment today and the wonderful experiences and perspectives that you've shared with all of our students. These valuable insights will help these individuals be strong leaders going forward. And we are so excited that we finished today with a very strong first Hultberg virtual Be Bold event. So we're grateful from the support from Mary Fisher, the Mellon Family Endowment, and the Hultberg Endowment, all of which has assisted us today in hosting this really unique virtual event. And we are grateful for your attendance and for being able to still reach you and have these conversations in a virtual format. So as we leave here today, I would encourage you, and I think our panelists would encourage you, to find a mentor, whether that be formally or informally. Encourage respect in the workplace. We talked a lot about integrity, character, authenticity, and so that realness in the workplace is so impactful. My father used to have a lesson for us that said, most people aren't thoughtless, they just don't take the time to be thoughtful. And so as a leader, if you can take the time to be thoughtful and considerate of others, that authenticity and character will shine through. So cultivate friendships, relationships, create a presence in the workplace so that people will remember you and remember the impact you had. And then be bold. As Carin said earlier, being bold builds confidence, and that confidence is infectious and will lead to greater perceptions of your leadership. So thank you again for joining us this afternoon for this signature Nistler College event. Take care.